Since the dawn of human history, God has symbolized both our fondest hopes and our darkest fears. We invoke His name at public events, implore His wrath against our enemies, and ask His blessings on our endeavors. We turn to Him in times of trouble, and we sing His praises when things are going well. But for all our talk about God, one question still remains unanswered. Does He actually exist? Or is He just a figment of our imaginations? The answer to this question has eluded both sages and simple believers for thousands of years. The rise of modern science brought both new reasons to believe in God and fresh cause to doubt His existence. Skeptics say that the random nature of evolution reveals a universe without design, while believers point to the universe's awe-inspiring beauty and immense complexity as proof for a creator. Believers and skeptics alike struggle with the problem of evil, which not only argues against God, but suggests that life is nothing but a futile struggle, absent of any inherent meaning whatsoever. But what if both sides of this argument are missing the point? What if the problem isn't God at all, but instead the ideas we have about God? What if God, far from being a distant and invisible entity, is a natural and visible part of the world? What if God is not the enemy of science, but rather its object of study? What if, instead of demanding our worship, God is instead asking for our partnership? The answer to whether or not God exists may all depend on what we mean when we use the term. If that's the case, then everything we think we know about God and about ourselves may be in for a transformation of biblical proportions. 2,000 years ago, a man named Jesus appeared in a remote corner of the Roman Empire, preaching a message that overturned the dominant value system of the ancient world. His sermons exalted forgiveness and nonviolence over earthly wealth and military conquest. His call to discipleship included elements of both radical acceptance and radical commitment, inviting everyone to follow his teachings while demanding that they live lives of compassion, gentleness, and self-sacrifice. Jesus was the exact opposite of how most cultures envision a leader. His friends were working class, not upper class. He exalted prostitutes and tax collectors over respected public figures and denounced external shows of piety in favor of inner humility. He had no interest whatsoever in playing political games or amassing great amounts of wealth. He and his disciples lived day by day, relying on God and His people for their daily needs. Over time, Jesus attracted the attention of the religious authorities who saw him as a threat to their power and privilege. He was arrested and tried on false charges, then handed over to the Romans for execution. He spent his last day on earth suffering in horrible pain, dying like a criminal even though he had committed no crime except the crime of telling the truth. But Jesus' ministry did not end with the grave. The New Testament tells us that He rose from the dead 3 days after His crucifixion, appeared to His closest followers, and commissioned them to spread His message throughout the world. Convinced of His divinity, Jesus' disciples set about fulfilling His final command. Their message found willing listeners among the countless millions of poor and marginalized people in the empire, who saw it as both a rejection of and substitute for the values of the Roman Empire. These early Christians devoted themselves to charity, nonviolence, and weekly gatherings in which they shared a communal meal and renewed their commitment to the man they regarded as their Lord and Savior. They pooled their modest resources to ensure that none of the believers were ever homeless or hungry. In doing so, they created a beloved community that testified of God's love for all of humanity. Christianity exploded in popularity throughout its early history, yet despite its growth, the Church struggled as a persecuted sect for centuries before emerging as the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. In 312 AD, the Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and set about to make it the official state religion, sometimes by persuasion, other times by force. This newfound acceptance gave church leaders the time and leisure they needed to formalize and systematize their beliefs. It was at this time that Christianity evolved from a religion of the common folk into a philosophically sophisticated belief system, complete with doctrines, dogmas, and an authorized set of scriptures. Many of the men who laid this foundation for modern Christianity were among the most astute and intelligent figures of their time. They were sincere, educated, and devoted to their search for the truth. But they were still products of the ancient world, with all of its superstitions and pre-scientific ideas. They believed the world was filled with evil spirits, that men were naturally superior to women, and that God had appointed Caesar to rule over the world. These inaccurate beliefs spilled over into their ideas about God's nature, many of which have proven deeply disturbing in recent years. Let's take a look at 4 of these beliefs and see why they're so troubling to many of us in the modern world. First is eternal unchangeability. The traditional Christian God looks more like a statue frozen in time than a person in the proper sense of the word. The way he is today is the way he was yesterday and the way he will be tomorrow. This means that he will never waver from his love for humanity. But it also means that he can never learn, never grow, and never become more than what he already is. Second is all-controlling sovereignty. To pre-Christian people, the natural world was controlled by supernatural spirits, not by natural law. This line of thinking was modified as Christianity became the dominant religion, giving God direct credit for everything that happened, from a bolt of lightning to a case of cholera. In modern terms, this means that any misfortune, or any good fortune for that matter, is caused by God's absolute and unwavering control of the universe. Third is total knowledge of the future. The God of classic Christianity knows exactly what we will do before we do it, since he exists outside of time and space. Early Christian theologians believed that this quality was essential for their conception of God as an essentially perfect being, but it also imposes severe limits on our free will, since God knows what we will do before we do it. Fourth is obsessive moral absolutism. The biblical God is obsessed with the personal behavior of his children, so much so that he punishes even minor misdeeds with horrible consequences. This is especially true in the Old Testament, where God slaughters his children for working on the Sabbath, taking a public census, or even practicing birth control. This fourfold picture of God was the foundational narrative of the Western world for most of the past 2,000 years. To its credit, it has given both personal comfort and moral guidance to uncounted millions of people, but its many flaws have become obvious over the past 300 years, thanks to the scrutiny of both science and scholarship. For example, we now know that lightning is caused by electrostatic discharges and earthquakes by shifts in the Earth's tectonic plates. We know that diseases are caused by germs and viruses, and that modern medicine is far more effective at curing illnesses than either prayer or acts of penance. We know that we are the products of an ages-old natural process called evolution, not the descendants of an imaginary couple who ate a piece of forbidden fruit. Speaking of Adam and Eve, we also know that many of the stories in the Bible are fables, written to illustrate important moral and spiritual truths, but bereft of any literal history whatsoever. At the same time, we have seen the danger that comes from exalting ecclesiastical authority over reason and common sense. The world is a better place today because democracy took the place of monarchy and science took the place of superstition. Yet much of the Christian world remains mired in an antiquated outlook that denies these facts, and seeks to undo the social and scientific progress that humanity has made over the past 300 years. Many of the church's highest profile leaders, meanwhile, are corrupt and predatory, caring more about wealth and worldly status than about doing what's right. This mindset has led to modern evangelical American subculture, with its right-wing alliances and merchandise-driven marketing. All of this is a far cry from the vision articulated by Jesus more than 2,000 years ago. Many of us, after considering these facts, have concluded that believing in God is absurd and antiquated. We have looked at the atrocities and injustices committed by religious institutions, and we have decided to reject all forms of organized spirituality. Some of us have gone further and embraced a strict form of atheistic materialism. According to this worldview, we are machines made of meat, bastard children of a mindless evolutionary process, orphaned here on earth to manufacture our own meaning in a meaningless universe. But is atheistic materialism backed by evidence and facts and logic? A growing body of evidence says that it's not. For example, when we examine the universe, we see that it's fine-tuned for the emergence of life, remarkably so. To understand what I'm talking about, take the force of gravity, for example. Were it a billionth of a fraction stronger than the Big Bang, instead of giving birth to the universe, would have quickly collapsed into a big crunch. On the other hand, if gravity were a billionth of a fraction weaker, then atoms could never bind together to form stars, planets, and galaxies. Instead, the cosmos would have turned out like a thin soup spread out across immense distance, with no form or shape whatsoever. Another example of fine-tuning is the way that helium atoms fuse together to create carbon. This fusion only occurs because the energy level of helium atoms is precisely the right value to make it possible. If the value differed by less than a trillionth of a degree, then carbon, which is the basis for all life, could never exist. A third example of fine-tuning is the relationship between the mass of protons and electrons. Specifically, a proton possesses almost exactly 2,000 times as much mass as that of an electron. Why is this important? Because if that ratio varied by even a minute amount, then DNA could never have formed, and the universe would be a cold, sterile wasteland. The three examples I just cited are just a handful of thousands of exquisitely fine-tuned parameters that scientists have noted over the years. The problem this creates for atheism is that there's no reason why the universe should appear this way unless it was created or self-created in such a way that life could emerge and evolve. For their part, atheists are well aware that the universe appears fine-tuned for life. That's why they invented the multiverse, which, if you've never heard the term, is the belief that our universe is but one of countless trillions of parallel universes, all of which differ from each other only slightly. We exist only because we were lucky enough to end up in the universe that has conditions favorable for life. This multiverse theory has a fatal problem, though. There's no proof to back it up. It's based upon extrapolations of partial theories that are in turn based upon mathematical models unsupported by any observational evidence whatsoever. In short, the multiverse is every bit as speculative and unfounded as the traditional Christian concept of God. There's another disturbing aspect of modern atheism that becomes more apparent with every passing day. That's the fact that many of its leaders have become caricatures of the televangelists and faith healers they rightfully criticize. Their followers fill internet message boards and social media platforms with their own version of irrational and hateful fundamentalism. Yet in all of these endless arguments with Christians, they fail to demonstrate any evidence of moral superiority or intellectual sincerity. This sad situation has left most of the Western world with two equally implausible options. One side, classic Christian theism, believes in an invisible man in the sky. The other side, modern materialistic atheism, believes in an invisible cosmic lottery. Both sides have run out of gas. If these were our only choices, then we would be out of luck. Fortunately, there is a third option. It's called pantheism, and it forges a middle course between atheism and traditional Western religion. It finds transcendent meaning in the universe without the need for a transcendent God. It embraces scientific discovery without denying the value of faith. Most importantly, it offers a resolution to the tired old arguments between skeptics and believers. Before I discuss what pantheism is, I should first talk about what it's not. First, pantheism is not nature worship. You can be a pantheist without believing in tree spirits or river fairies. Second, pantheism is not synonymous with New Age or Wiccan beliefs, although many New Agers and Wiccans identify with certain elements of pantheism. Third, pantheism does not deny God's personhood or the possibility of life after death. You can believe in both God's personhood and some form of immortality and still be a pantheist. Fourth, pantheism does not teach that we, you and I, are ourselves God, in the sense of being able to create planets or living creatures. So how does pantheism differ from traditional Western approaches to religion? For one thing, it doesn't ask if God exists. Instead, it acknowledges the fact that the universe exists and then seeks to understand the nature of that universe. We know that the world is rational. We know that it's coherent. We know that it contains consciousness and intent. We know that it has progressed from infancy to maturity. We know that it behaves more like a purposeful entity than like a mindless, soulless machine. From these facts, pantheism concludes that the universe is infused with a sacred essence that we may rightly call the mind of God. One way to sum it up is to say that the universe is God's body and God is the universe's mind. So how do we describe the pantheistic conception of God? The answer is seen in 5 key points. First, the universe is universally conscious. This is a philosophical position known as panpsychism, and it holds that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe and exists everywhere to one degree or another. Second, the universe is on a continuous journey towards ever greater structure, complexity, and enrichment. This means that our best days are yet ahead, despite the apocalyptic nightmares cooked up by authors of popular Christian novels. Third, God interacts with the world through persuasion, not power. To me, this is the most wonderful aspect of the pantheistic perspective, because it abolishes the Calvinist image of God as an angry, all-powerful judge, and reassures us that the atrocities ascribed to God in the Bible never actually occurred. Fourth, God feels what we feel. That's because she has made herself vulnerable by incarnating herself into the physical universe. She experiences every moment of pain, sorrow, and agony that her children experience. Or, to borrow a phrase from Alfred North Whitehead, the famous philosopher, God is the fellow sufferer who understands. Fifth, we are free to create our own future. This means we can either partner with God to enrich and improve the world, or we can take the path to self-punishment. Either way, the choice is ours. Pantheism reimagines the way we think about prayer. To the pantheist, prayer is not a magical formula for getting what we want. Instead, it's a way of glimpsing the interconnectedness of all things, of looking past our physical senses and reminding ourselves that nothing and no one is ever truly lost. This means that our loved ones have not gone away. They live forever, both in our memories and in those segments of space-time that we call the past. Albert Einstein, who identified as a pantheist, understood this truth. In 1955, he wrote a letter of condolence to the widow of a close friend. In the text of the letter, he included these words: "Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. The goal of prayer and of spiritual disciplines such as meditation is to give us a glimpse of this timeless, deathless world. But this eternal realm is not separate from the physical universe. Rather, it's an extension of our universe. It's the immaterial ground of being from which the material world arises. Pantheism brings God down to earth. She is not some transcendent being disconnected from the universe. She is the heart and soul of the universe. She is powerful, but not all-powerful. She acts according to physical law, upholding those laws at all times for the sake of all of us. Those laws are the only thing that keeps creation from descending into chaos, but they come with a heavy price. The same law of momentum that governs how birds fly and trains move also determines whether a person in an auto accident will stay safely in the vehicle or go crashing through the windshield. As far as evolution is concerned, it is one of God's greatest creations. She created it, and it created us. But evolution also created cancer. And in the final analysis, that's exactly what evil is. It's cancer infesting an otherwise healthy body. Our job is not to condemn God for carrying this disease, nor is it to get God off the hook for the evil in the world. In pantheism, we're not lawyers, we're doctors, we're healers. Our job is to treat the disease, to heal God's body, and in the process to heal ourselves. Two things fill my mind with ever-increasing admiration and awe, wrote 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant. The starry heavens above me and the moral law within me. Kant understood that moral values, the principle of fairness, the importance of compassion, the golden rule, are as powerful as the forces that turn matter into energy and pull apples down from trees. The laws of nature and the principles of moral conduct are both expressions of the same divine mind. That mind, the thing that we call God, is not some abstract entity watching us from afar. He or she is inside of us, all the way down to the subatomic particles that make up every cell of our bodies. God is as much a part of us as we are a part of God. Together we make up all that exists. That is pantheism. That is the promise of a God who makes sense. She invites us to join her on her journey to ever greater enrichment and improvement, to make the world a better place, and to appreciate the sheer miracle of our own existence. God's invitation is before us. How we respond is up to you and me.